Okay, so picture an island. But forget the white sand and the turquoise water for a second. Imagine the soil is red. And I don't mean a nice earthy clay color. I mean it looks like straight up dried blood.
Wow. Yeah, that is a very visceral image to start with.
Right, and it gets weirder. Because when it rains on this island, the locals say the sky is weeping relief, and you can actually see that red soil washing down into the ocean, turning the waves pink. This is Redtongue Island. And the warning for this place is pretty simple. The dead here are, quote, not polite about staying dead.
Which is exactly where we want to be today. We're doing a deep dive into the Book of Hungry Ghosts. And I have to say, this is it's one of the most ambitious narratives we've tackled in a while.
It really is a monster of a story. It's this sprawling, multi-generational saga about three women, Mercy, Augustina, and Soledad. And they live on the edge of the sentient forest called the Bellywoods. And when I say sentient, I mean the trees might just eat you if you stay out too long after dark.
Yeah, it's a setting that feels very alive and, frankly, very dangerous. But what makes this story so compelling isn't just the spooky forest. It's how it uses that magic to deconstruct some very real, very heavy concepts. Things like justice, memory, and the lingering scars of colonial violence.
Exactly, because usually when we hear the term magical realism, we think of, whimsical stuff, someone floating up into the sky while doing laundry or whatever.
Yeah.
But this is brutal. We're talking about women who literally transform into wolves to bite back against the system.
Right. The magic here isn't whimsy at all. It's weaponry. And our mission today is to really unpack how that works. How does a story about women eating sea captains and talking to Iron Janes actually give us a blueprint for understanding systemic oppression?
Well, you had me at eating sea captains, so let's just jump right into that. Because the matriarch of this family, Grandmother Mercy, is, she's terrifying. She's 83 years old, and the story introduces her by saying she was never merciful.
Mercy represents the old law. She is the direct response to immediate physical violence. And I think we need to clarify something for you listening right away. When we say she's a wolf, we are not being poetic.
No, we really aren't. This was the part that made me do a double take because the text describes her waking up with an actual ancient wolf sleeping in her bed. It's got yellow teeth. It predicts the future. It is a very physical presence.
It is. Mercy is quite literally a wolf in human skin. But the fascinating part is how she got there. I mean, she wasn't born a monster. She was made one.
And this goes back to her childhood, right? When she was just 7 years old.
Yes. Her mother takes her out into the woods, into the Bellywoods, and basically presents her with an impossible choice. She says, in this world, you are either prey or predator. You are the sheep or the wolf. Choose.
Talk about bad parenting 101. Here, sweetie. Eat this raw meat or get eaten.
It's horrific. But in the context of the story, it's actually presented as an act of love. Her mother is trying to survive in a colonial environment where softness just equals death. So Mercy chooses the wolf, she eats the raw meat, she chooses to have teeth.
And that choice defines everything she does for the next 80 years. She firmly believes that to be free, you have to be capable of extreme violence. Which brings us to the scene that, honestly, everyone talks about, the arrival of the Clemency.
This is the pivotal moment. The Clemency is a slave ship. It arrives at the port carrying 147 enslaved people. Now, Mercy senses a blood relative on board.
And this is where the wolf aspect really kicks in. She puts on this bright red dress, which is clearly her hunting gear, and she just marches right onto this ship. Now, I fully expected her to just start tearing people apart right there on the deck, but she doesn't.
No, and that is exactly what makes her so dangerous.
Yeah.
She understands the rules of the enemy. She walks up to the captain, who is this ultimate symbol of civilized commerce. He's got his manifest, he's talking about cargo, he's very polite, and Mercy just plays along. She offers to buy her relative and 10 others.
It's such a tense standoff. You have this woman who could easily rip his throat out, casually negotiating a price, but then she does something weird. She pays extra, a 20% premium. Why?
For irregularity.
Irregularity. That is such a cold, bureaucratic word for what happens next.
It really is. She pays the extra fee because she absolutely refuses to let the captain unlock the chains. She wants to take the people and the iron.
This is the moment that completely blew my mind. She gets them off the ship, still chained up together, and instead of using a key or a bolt cutter or something, she talks to the metal.
She speaks to it in what the book calls the old tongue.
Which, I mean, it sounds a bit like a cheat code, doesn't it? Like Open Sesame?
It sounds like it on the surface, but look a little deeper. She isn't commanding the chains to open. She is reminding the iron of what it used to be. She reminds the metal that before it was forged into a tool of slavery, it was earth. It was ore. It was a natural thing.
And the chains just disintegrate. They literally turn into rust dust.
Think about the philosophical weight of that for a second. It suggests that oppression, the ships, the chains, the handcuffs, it's all artificial. It's a violent imposition on the natural world. Mercy's magic is simply the ability to cut through the lie and return things to their natural state.
That is actually really profound. It's not destroying the metal, it's liberating the metal from being a weapon.
Precisely. But then, true to her nature, Mercy takes these newly freed people into the Bellywoods and gives them the exact same terrible choice her mother gave her. Eat the meat, become a wolf, or stay a sheep.
It's a brutal binary. There is zero middle ground in Mercy's world. You're either the butcher or the cattle.
And that strategy works for Mercy. But the story is smart enough to ask, what happens when the violence isn't physical? What happens when the enemy isn't a captain with a whip, but a clerk with a pen?
Which perfectly introduces the second generation, Augustina, the daughter.
Right, so Augustina is 57. She is the mother figure of the three, and her life looks very, very different from Mercy's. She lives in a Prussian blue house.
I love that specific detail. Prussian blue, it just feels so cold, so orderly.
It is orderly. It represents the colonial order itself. She was married for 23 years to a man named Cristobal. And Cristobal isn't a soldier or a captain. He is a mid-level bureaucrat. He loves handwriting, he loves files, he loves hierarchy.
He sounds like the most boring man on earth. But then Augustina breaks into his locked study, and what she finds isn't, a secret stash of love letters or gambling debts. It's a ledger of absolute horrors.
It is the banality of evil in its purest form. She finds records of voluntary sales of land. But when she reads the margins, she sees the actual truth. These families were threatened, indebted, and forced to sign. It was massive theft, but Cristobal made it look like a lawful procedure.
And it gets so much darker. She finds photos of 47 young girls. This guy was actively facilitating trafficking, selling girls into sexual slavery, and he was filing the receipts like he was just doing his taxes.
This is a crucial critique the author is making. Cristobal represents the official record. The system says if it is written down, stamped, and filed, it is legal. Therefore, it is quote-unquote good. Augustina realizes that the archive itself is a weapon.
So how does she handle him? Because she's a wolf daughter, but she doesn't use her teeth.
No, because teeth don't work on bureaucracy. She uses his own tools against him. She poisons him, but she does it slowly, over 2 entire years, using tea. She makes his death look like a natural decline, just a standard heart failure.
Which is terrifyingly patient.
But it mirrors exactly what the colonial system does to the island. It doesn't always kill you quickly with a bullet. Sometimes it just slowly drains the life out of you, while maintaining a very polite, respectable exterior.
But she doesn't just stop with him. This is the part of her character arc that I found the most fascinating. She becomes an archivist herself. She starts hunting the other men in Cristobal's files, guys like Fernando Reyes, who we'll talk about in a minute. But she doesn't just kill them.
No, she copies their documents first. This is arguably the most important strategic shift in the whole book. Mercy saves the bodies, but Augustina saves the truth.
She's building an archive of crimes.
Yes, because she understands that if you just kill the bad guys, the system will replace them and say, oh, those are just a few bad apples. To actually destroy the system, you have to prove that the foundation itself is rotten. You have to have the receipts.
So you have Mercy with the brute force and Augustina with the hard evidence, which brings us to the third generation. Soledad, the granddaughter.
Soledad is 29, and she is the bridge. The narrative tells us she was conceived by Augustina and a ghost, a murdered sailor named Thomas.
So she's basically half dead herself.
In a way, yes. She exists in both worlds simultaneously. And because of that, she carries the burden of witness. She sees ghosts. And we aren't talking about 1 or 2. She sees thousands.
The descriptions in this part are just haunting. The ghosts aren't floating around silently saying boo. They are demanding, they are loud, they desperately want to be acknowledged.
And if Soledad ignores them, they threaten to consume her entirely. So to keep them at bay, she has to literally tell their stories. She becomes a medium, a living library of the dead.
So she keeps a strict count, too. 5,111 stories so far. And the book zooms in on number 5,111 specifically. A girl named Isabel.
Isabel Consuela Magdalena Reyes. It's so important that we look at her because Isabel wasn't an enslaved person. She was a wealthy, highly privileged 16-year-old in 1825.
Right, she's definitely in the Prussian Blue House class,
No.
but she's still a victim.
She is. Her father was forcing her into a marriage solely to consolidate land holdings. She was property. just a bargaining chip,
And she chose to commit suicide in her wedding dress rather than go through with it.
which highlights that the patriarchal colonial system crushes everyone in its path. Whether you are in the cargo hold of the clemency or sitting in the master bedroom of the governor's palace, if you are a woman, your body is not your own. Isabel's suicide was a desperate act of reclaiming ownership.
So Soledad tells this tragic story to the other ghosts, and it brings a brief moment of peace. But then it's like the boss battle happens. A ghost named Yara shows up.
Yara is 500 years old. She is an indigenous Taino ghost. She dates back to the very first arrival of the colonizers. And she makes a demand that completely changes the scope of the entire book. She tells Soledad that telling individual stories isn't enough anymore. She wants the true history of the island, every single death, every erasure.
He wants the whole timeline. I mean, that is a massive workload for one person.
It is. But this request is the engine that drives the climax. Because now you have Mercy providing the courage, Augustina providing the evidence, and Soledad providing the voice. Together, they are gathering the physical, legal, and spiritual ammunition to finally take the whole system down.
Let's talk about that takedown. Because usually, in these kinds of epic stories, there's a big, bloody war. Troops on the field, cannons firing, barricades. But the collapse of the government here is, well, it's strangely quiet.
It's surprisingly realistic. It begins with Soledad's first kill. She hunts down Fernando Reyes in an alley, one of the men from her mother's files. By doing this, she officially marks her transition into a wolf, just like her grandmother. But the broader societal collapse happens simply because the supports are pulled away.
The dock workers strike, the servants just walk right out of the wealthy people's houses.
And crucially, when the governor calls in the police and the military to crack down on the strike, they refuse to shoot. Why? Because they're working-class people too. They look around and realize they have way more in common with the people in the streets than the people hiding in the palace.
I just love that image of the governor's palace sitting there, completely empty, no one to guard the big doors, no one to cook the fancy food. The power just evaporates.
Because power requires compliance. Once you stop complying, the scary governor is really just an old man sitting alone in a big room.
So our three women, Mercy, Augustina, and Soledad, they walk right up to this abandoned palace. And they don't burn it down. Well, not yet anyway. They turn it into an art exhibit.
They turn it into a museum of truth. They lay out all of Augustina's archive, the land theft records, the terrible photos of the 47 trafficked girls. They set up Isabel's wedding dress. And they display Soledad's book of 5,111 stories.
They force the entire public to come and look at it.
Because witnessing is the key. Before you can ever have justice, you must have acknowledgement. The people need to see that their poverty wasn't just bad luck, it was deliberate theft. They need to see that the great men of history were actually monsters.
And only after everyone sees all of that evidence, then the fires start.
And notice what burns. The banks, the administrative buildings, the title deed offices. They selectively burn the structures that maintain the lie.
But they've already saved the truth in their own archive. It's almost like backing up your hard drive before smashing the computer.
That is a very modern way to put it, but yes, exactly.
Now, we definitely have to talk about the ending. Because after the rebellion, the ghosts finally fade away. They've been seen, they've been witnessed, so they can rest. But then this entirely new character appears out of the smoke. A woman named Testimonio.
This is the final layer of magical realism in the book. Testimonio looks like a 25-year-old woman, but she wasn't born biologically. The story explicitly says she was born from the stories. She's the daughter of testimony and memory.
So she's like an avatar, a golem made out of stories.
She's a living embodiment of the collective memory. You see, the three women, Mercy, Augustina, and Soledad, they are mortal. They are getting old. Eventually, they will die. But Testimonio won't.
Ah, I get it. It's saying that you can't just rely on heroes forever. Heroes die, but the story itself has to keep living.
Exactly. The work of justice isn't a single destination you reach and then stop. It's a continuous practice. It requires a keeper. Testimonio was created to ensure that in 50 years or 100 years, the island doesn't just forget again. She is the ultimate safeguard against the cycle repeating.
That is such a powerful place to land. It really moves the story away from being just a cool revenge fantasy into a deep meditation on history.
It absolutely does.
So let's bring this all home for you listening. Maybe you're driving to work or folding laundry right now. We've got wolves, we've got ghosts, we've got sentient trees. But what is the big takeaway here?
I think it really comes down to the battle between the official record and the true memory. You have Cristobal's files, which are neat, orderly, completely legal, but full of lies. And then you have Soledad's stories, which are messy, painful, totally irrational, but fundamentally true.
The book is basically daring us to stop trusting the neatness of the official story.
It is. It's asking us to listen to the hungry ghosts, the marginalized voices, the people who have been actively written out of the history books, because that is where the truth actually lives.
And it's also a reminder that freedom requires teeth, right? You can't just politely ask for the chains to be taken off. Sometimes you have to sing to the iron or poison the tea or stand on the docks and simply refuse to load the ship.
It is a profound call to active resistance. You have to be willing to disrupt the comfortable order if you ever want to find justice.
Okay, here is a final thought I want to leave everyone with. We talked about Augustina building that archive of crimes, finding the absolute horror hidden in the margins of her husband's highly respectable files. If we really looked at the archive of our own comfortable systems today, our supply chains, the cheap clothes we buy, the electronics we use, whose invisible labor or erased history would we find documented in those margins?
That is the uncomfortable question.
Yeah.
And even more importantly, who is keeping that record right now? Who is our Augustina?
Definitely something for you to chew on today. Maybe just don't transform into a wolf during your commute, though. Drive safe.
Yeah, please don't do that.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We will catch you in the next one.